Right then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another. I was going to say then before we start an RGM podcast, but that's not true this week, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a bit of a special episode on our hands today, and I came up with an idea. Right, bear with me. I feel that I watch a lot of like podcasts and that kind of stuff, and particularly American podcasts, and there's a big community out there where they get each other on each other's shows, and I haven't really been seeing that out there in the market, ladies and gentlemen. So I wanted to reach out to two other great music podcasts out there, and let's all share each other's experience of being in the music industry and sharing our stories through our podcasts. Let's all get together and have a chat, shoot the shit, have a bit of fun, introduce each other's to each other's podcast, and have a bit of a laugh. So if you're listening on Time for Heroes or the Fantastival podcast, this is a bit of a new voice for you, but you're going to be hearing your hosts next. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got three podcasters on hands. I'm Carl from the RGM Experience podcast. We've got Martin Morel from Time for Heroes and Stephen Nussbaum from the Fantastival podcast. Hey up, lads.
All right, Carol.
You all right?
Pleasure to come on to this. A brilliant idea.
Yeah. Well, we can see how we go, really. We've got no real structure to it, but we've all done this before. We know how to talk. We know how to get through another episode, don't we? Sometimes, because I don't know about you guys. It's and I don't really think the outside world appreciates how much hard work you have to put into, particularly a weekly podcast or even more. I know some guys do. So yeah, introduce yourselves to let's everybody introduce themselves and then get going.
Brilliant. Well, I start.
Go on then, mate.
So I'm Martin Morel. I got a frog in my throat. Yeah. I'm Martin Morel. I host the Time for Heroes podcast, which I've been doing since lockdown, sometime around about then. That's when I get the idea to do podcasts. Initially, I had another podcast called the Typical Time podcast, which was based around the Dundee band, The View. I got the idea for the very first podcast I listened to was the Oasis podcast. So that's where I kind of get the idea to focus on a band. And I did 8 episodes there. Never interviewed any member of the band, and it was a struggle. And I thought, right, I'm gonna reach out, I'm gonna branch out and make it a bigger podcast where I can get different guests, and that's where Time for Heroes came along, and I was able to kind of interview any musician I wanted. It didn't need to be based on this band. Since then, in the 4 years I've been doing it, I've had every member of The View on. So
nice.
Mental that I couldn't get them on the actual podcast that I wanted, but that's the way it goes. But I started it in lockdown. I've been doing it. I've moved from the kitchen to the living room.
Nice.
I've moved from free Zoom to paid Zoom, and that's about it. But in the 4 years, if you look back at the guests that I've had, you can see the progression. And hopefully in the next 4 years, I'll hear Liam Gallagher and Noel Gallagher and Paul McCartney and people like that. Like.
That'd be the dream. They're my dream guests as well.
Yeah, so that's me. That's a podcast in a nutshell. I'm sure we'll get into it as we go further on. But that's it for me. So probably into you now, Steve.
Yeah, so I'm Steve Nussbaum. I host the Fantastival podcast. So anyone who listens to my pod would have heard Carl about 9 months ago, I think, give or take. So I do podcast on the Orient Outlook podcast, which started 10 years ago, and that's still going strong. But over COVID, all football got not postponed. Well, it did get postponed, didn't it? So football got postponed, and I was kind of sitting there on furlough, getting involved in the Tim Burgess's listening parties, and I thought this is a really cool idea. He's building a really good community at a time of struggle and uncertainty. It seems to be a project for Tim that brought everyone together. And then I started thinking, well, the Orient podcast is on hiatus because we don't even know if the world's going to be here in 6 months' time. And one thing I do know is that I can't talk to all my mates about Leyton Orient, but I can talk to all my mates about music. And then I thought I don't want it to be um, just a standard podcast of, oh, what music do you like? Who do you listen to? I wanted to kind of get a spin on it. And then I started thinking about all the different angles of what could happen. And then the idea of the Fantasy Festival came to me. And so the idea of the Fantastival podcast was born from there, really. And at first, it was just a way of me keeping up to date and checking in with my pals. So the first, I would say, 40 episodes are me and my mates just talking about gigs and fun. And naturally, I guess, as you get a bit of momentum behind you, you start kind of going off into different areas. So I work for HMV. There's a lot of ex-HMV whose musical knowledge is massive and branched out into a few of those people who then branched out to a few new music people. And then before you know it, you've hit a community and a whole different world that you didn't know existed. So very quickly, it became what I thought would be kind of a COVID lockdown small solo project to 5 years later, 175 episodes in pretty much every week, barring the last couple of months that I can go into if we need to. But I'm happy to say this is like the second podcast back, and it's back hopefully to do on a weekly basis. But Carl, you touched on a really important point earlier. I think when you're doing the intros, it is hard to maintain a weekly podcast. A lot goes into it. The actual recording and the Zoom is actually probably like the easiest part of it,
Yeah.
I find. So, getting the guest list, arranging that can take quite a lot of work. There's quite a lot of chasing. There's emails that have to go out. There's connections you've got to make. And then once you've recorded, then you can edit as much as you want and not edit, which can be really long or really short. And then you need to spend your time in thinking about how you're going to approach how you push the episode as well. So I'm quite relentless in mine. Some people will do one post and they'll leave it and they'll see what happens naturally. I'm the complete opposite. I'm 3 posts a day. I'm plugging as hard as I can as video content because
Yeah.
if someone's taken the time to come on the pod and I've worked hard at it, I'm like, I want everyone to listen to it, and whether it gets, I know, anything from 100 to 300 listens or more or less. For me, that's a huge achievement. So it takes an awful amount of time to do. So I commend both of you gents on the hard work that goes into it, because you, as a listener, you can listen to a 40-minute podcast and go, oh, yeah, that was quite nice, and kind of dispose of it. But, it's a lot more than the 40 minutes that people will hear on the other side of their headphones.
Yeah, in it, just like because making reels, because I do quite a lot of video content. I do use AI to create those reels these days. I use an app thing that creates them for me. You just put the YouTube link in and it creates them. Some are created better than others, but there's just not enough time in the days. And I presume everybody works full time as well. And we do this as a passion project. It is my most favorite thing that I do on RGM, is having these chats. But my worst thing about doing it is doing all the socials and doing all that stuff. The chat's great, innit? But the hard work and things you have to do to promote the podcast is a completely another thing.
It's also into the realm of the unknown, because I guess we've all had guests who might be high profile and you go, well, this should really, really get a lot of listens, a lot of traction, a lot of new followers. And sometimes they'll just plod along. And other times you can get maybe a lesser known guest and you think, well, this will do all right. It's just someone I wanted to speak to. And this probably won't engage as much as what a high profile one will. But actually, a lot of those times, it's sometimes a lower profile guest who can really take you by surprise,
Yeah.
really gain you a new audience. So it's always an exciting kind of way or journey, I guess, each episode. So with me, I always announce on the Saturday evening, and I always look forward to that because I never kind of reveal who's coming on beforehand. So you get the anticipation of the Saturday, then you get the launch of the Sunday morning, and the Sunday is all exciting because you kind of,
Podcast day.
you know, everyone tracks their listens. I like everyone goes, oh, I'm not really fussed about listens, but everyone
Yeah.
probably is, aren't they, to a certain extent. So you've got one eye on what's going on. You've got your social posts going, people reacting, and I guess everyone's kind of got their usual kind of core fan base. Sounds quite wanky, doesn't it? Core fan base. But everyone's got the guys who will listen and pick it up, and then kind of get the new guys, and then you might see your Spotify followers like go up a little bit. Oh, this is interesting. So it's always a bit of a view into the unknown at points, which makes it quite an exciting place to be.
Yeah. And you, Martin?
I think what Stevie said there about the the lesser guests. I think sometimes with the lesser guests as well, they're more inclined to engage in it and to share it on their socials.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the time I find with the bigger guests, they just record a podcast and then they forgot about it. It's just kind of their PR that deal with it. So
Yeah.
they don't bother sharing it, promoting it, anything like that. Whereas
Yeah.
the lesser guests that have got something to sell, they're more inclined to kind of engage. And that's kind of what I've noticed probably the last few months where I've done it for the start of the year.
I think that's quite common in everything, though. Just sorting RGM out, we cover big guests, and they don't tend to share a post from RGM. But the little guys that we cover, they all share it because they love it, they appreciate it, and they're probably live on their own socials where the bigger guests aren't, are they? Or they just think, I'm not going to share it for whatever reason that may be. But that is a popular thing that we come across on RGM, not just on the podcast. I think it's just industry wide, which is a bit of a bane. But
I mean, my socials give me the fear. I see like this TikTok and all that. You like Stevie, you're brilliant on the videos you post on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook, like promoting it. I don't do any of that. I mean, I don't do a video podcast anyway. But it gives me the fear, and obviously I'm managing the band as well, and they don't engage in any socials. They hardly do any of that stuff. So it's really hard. But that's where you need to go. I'm giving the band a kick up the arse in it, because if they don't kind of start doing the socials, we're not going to get anywhere, and I'll end up walking away.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the perception isn't it that you need to really drive your podcast, I guess, through your socials, right? So I guess when you're pitching to whoever you want to pitch to, the first thing they're going to do, if they've got a manager, is probably look at the Fantastival podcast Twitter account, right? So you're always trying to kind of build that. But I think through doing the podcast, I don't know kind of about you, James, but it's definitely made me more kind of self-confident. So before the pod, I would never be able to hold a video and walk and talk for a minute without even thinking about it, or you very quickly get used to the sound of your own voice very quickly. So I think that's how podcasting kind of helps you with that self-confidence. The videos are quite easy, actually.
Yeah.
Kind of once you start the self-promo, and Carl, I presume when you're editing, you're obviously watching yourself back when you're editing your video, so you become quite comfortable with the feel and the sound of your voice and your look.
The editing side of things is really quick. I keep a lot of it, unless there's been a break in the Zoom videos where you've got to edit it and try and bridge a gap somewhere. But generally, it is just record, and if Zoom don't mess up, then that'll be the conversation generally. I don't like editing too much. It's what is it that I don't like about editing? The time it takes. And I think a conversation should be a conversation as well. I think if you're editing somebody's opinion, that don't really sit well with me. If they say it, it's always great when a guest says, "Are you all right?" When you ask them at the end, "Are you all right with that?" and they say, "Yeah." The guests that tend to say, "Now, can you edit this bit out?" I'm just always a bit wary of, and I don't, because I stand by it. I just think, well, it's a conversation. We've just had a chat. It weren't that bad. People can overthink, and you can overthink the editing process, I think. So
yeah,
natural, and let it be free.
I very rarely edit. I don't really bother with the edit as such, because it is so time consuming. See if you think you've recorded a podcast and it lasts an hour, and then you need to get back and re-listen to it. I kind of think, see, once I get off the interview, you know whether it's went well or not, don't you?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, right, that's fine. There's nothing needs done there. I'll just put it out. I'll just tidy up the loose ends either end and put it all together, and then it goes out. Going back, Carol, obviously, because we've kind of talked about our podcasts.
Yeah.
How did yours start? Because I can mind seeing I'm pretty sure it was you, like a wee video on YouTube, you sitting in a motor, maybe doing interviews with makers.
Well, I've always I've been doing RGM for over 10 years and 15 years. Where's time go? So I've always been interviewing bands, and I came up with an idea. I got an electric car many years ago, and I thought, well, these are quiet. Can I get a guest in here, stick a camera somewhere on dashboard, and record somebody while we're driving about? And it kind of took off. Carl's RGM Road Trip or something like that. It was called back in the day.
Yeah.
I had John McClure on and that kind of stuff, and he were like picked him up and we had a drive about. He were impressed to be in an electric car and stuff back in the day, and that were all nice. And I found out that you should really have business insurance for that kind of stuff.
Huh.
And when I looked into that, it was so much money that I just thought, oh, fuck it, I can't risk this anymore. It was just an idea that were great. It caught off. People loved it. I had a few nice guests and that. Clint Boone and that driving around M60 and this kind of stuff, picked him up from his house, all that kind of stuff were brilliant. And I prefer things face to face, but having the risk of having an accident or something like that is just not worth it. So I kind of had to park that. And I've always done interviews with bands. I've been podcasting for many years, like 10 years or so, like just doing Carl Maloney Presents and that kind of stuff. I all started doing a bit of a radio show, playing music and having a playlist and promoting bands and stuff that we do through RGM. But that kind of got problematic because there's licensing rules with music and you can't, Apple can or Spotify can block your podcast if you're playing music to it, so it's really problematic legally to play music through podcasts these days. So I kind of had to think about what am I going to do? Let's just talk then. So it was in lockdown again, lockdowns created so many podcasts, it sounds like. And I'm nearly up to 200 now. So 200 weeks of me talking bollocks. But I kind of just decided to rebrand it all and do it. I started and call it the RGM Experience and go again, really, and start another series of this thing, which is as I said earlier, it's one of the favorite things that I do on the podcast. It is out of all the stuff that we do on RGM, it's just fun. It's it helps me in loads of different ways as well, like communication and that kind of stuff. Because in general, in the real world, when I'm from a background when you like a lad's background type thing, where you don't really talk a lot, you know what I mean? And you don't go deeper into conversations and that kind of stuff. And I've always felt a little bit like I can't have a conversation with people. So this podcast for me has helped me develop my communication skills and get better at opening up more, really, and just having natural conversations with people where in the past it wouldn't have come naturally to me at all, and I wouldn't have done it. I'll have just not said out. I've always been a bit of a daft lad. I've always had a big loud voice. I've always messed about a bit, but I'd never really had conversations. And my wife will back me up with that, I think. So for me, it's really helped me develop my communication skills with people and just speak to people on a different level than what I was doing previously.
I think when you talk music as well, it's quite an emotive subject. So I never really thought about the mental health aspect of the podcast until a few people, and I had it a few weeks running where someone said, I've really found it quite therapeutic to talk about some of these early memories. And I thought, actually, I don't ask anything about mental health, but everyone keeps saying it's like a therapy session in some respects. So then that's when I started introducing a mental health question. And I always ask that first because I think if someone's not listened to the podcast before, it kind of doesn't catch them out, but it just makes them think, actually, this might be a bit of a different kind of podcast to the usual, tell us about your new album, straight away in there. And you always find that questions always unlocks like maybe what could be a barrier later on in the podcast. And that seems to open people up. And, you get people talking about early memories, whether it's with their families, their friends, and then some people will reveal far too much on the podcast, which is great for me because they start opening up really quickly. But it's a great way, like you said, of getting people who might not necessarily want to talk. Like some musicians are probably there just because they've got their agent or their manager telling them you should do this because it's quite good exposure, who probably aren't so good on a one-to-one basis. So I think it's a great learning tool about kind of myself, and I've found out a lot about myself through podcasting, and I'm sure it sounds like you have as well, Carl, and I'm sure you've done this, found out the same, Martin.
Yeah, I mean, with me, so I went to, once I left school, I went to college and I studied an HNC in media studies.
I did that in Sheffield. I did one of them.
Yeah, so I done the first year. Then I had a spell in hospital for a couple of months and I kind of dropped out the second year and then fell into work. I've been working with Royal Mail for 23 years. And kind of that way you just get stuck in that rut. And it wasn't until COVID came along and I was like, obviously I listen to podcasts all the time. And I thought, I'm going to do that. And doing this podcast is the first time I've used these skills for the media studies course 23 years prior, and that's the first time I've used them. So it's funny how like COVID is kind of gave everybody that push. Obviously, I speak about it a lot with the bands that I speak to, and I always ask them how COVID's helped their careers, and it's been a bigger help to most than that has been like a hurdle. Yeah. But it's probably the same with podcasters. When obviously, as you said, Carol, the amount of podcasts that have started during lockdown. So I think it's definitely progressed. My confidence has got better as I've done it more, as I've I went for the first podcast to the second podcast. Obviously, as I said, that first podcast was 8 episodes. If you go back and Google that, average time for a podcast, average amount of episodes is eight episodes before people quit. Yeah. But the difference is I quit and then started again, and it's worked this time. So
I feel like you can't even really get to know how you're going to even evolve the podcast until you get up to at least 30 to 40 episodes. I feel like all those early episodes, you're kind of finding your way. So by the time I got to the FANTASTIVAL, I knew enough about podcasting that I was quite confident. But I remember with like the Orient Outlook, the first 9 or 10 episodes we recorded on GarageBand because we didn't know how else to record it. And GarageBand is obviously a free app on Apple, and the time limit is 32 minutes. Back then, you could not go over 32 minutes on GarageBand. So we had to literally keep a timer. And when we got to 30 minutes, no matter what we were talking about, we just had to stop it and literally do our outros and get out of there, because at 32 minutes, it just cuts off. So you are constantly learning and evolving. And I think all 3 shows have found kind of their way forwards, unless, there's going to be some kind of dramatic things that happen in the future with these podcasts. I feel like we've all kind of got our structures and guests. And obviously, you can go well off topic. I remember, Cole, in my episode with you last year, I think the last 20 minutes, once we'd done your fantasy festival, I think we got into a bit of a discussion about podcasting, because it's quite nice, because you never quite know where your podcast might take you. Obviously, they're music-based podcasts, but you can end up talking about something completely different, which is kind of where the enjoyment could come from.
I think a lot of people prefer to hear a conversation with a band or an artist rather than talk about the new album.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't tend to. I find anyway that people don't really give a shit about that. But they want to hear some stories. They want to hear about their experiences. They want to hear about what they were like at school. They want to hear about whatever it is. And obviously, you've got to. I do tag it into the end, the promotion side of it. Once I've dug as deep as I can, into the psyche or to what makes them tick and some daft stuff, and just try and get to the bottom of that person's personality rather than go straight into a fucking what's your new album like? It's brilliant, right? Where do I go from there? You know what I mean? And they can be quite hard work, musicians, sometimes. They all think they're fucking amazingly, like they're all cultured and they've got all these funny stories. But sometimes, particularly with the younger ones or the newer bands, you have to force a lot of stuff out of them, and that's quite a new skill I've developed through doing the podcast as well. Is getting the lesser known names to open up a little bit and not just think it's all about, I've got this single out Friday, it's going to be very good. You know what I mean? There's more to it than that, and it's a big skill to get them out of that zone and into a different mindset to give the people that are watching what they want.
It's amazing to see kind of where some of these, I guess, independent new music acts are like a heading, and they're going towards. And I guess again, without sounding too wanky, like we've been part of their upwards trajectory, right? So who knows in 3 or 4 years' time where some of the guests that we've had on over the last year or two could end up. So it's quite exciting watching the progression of some of these smaller acts, but also it's also quite exciting when, I guess the way your process is probably similar to mine. You get your time, you get your date, you arrange a Zoom call, you send your link, you're sitting there 5 minutes before on the Zoom, waiting for someone to join, and you're sitting there and you've got like a little buzz. There's that little buzz that starts going around, and then suddenly you get like a little flash on your screen going, John Power has entered your waiting room, and you're like, fuck!
I want to get out of here. I get it. I talk about it in the podcast quite a lot. And I think it's a little bit of a, like, anxiety inside of me. I'm just like, every time, like when I get that notification that you've got a podcast in 30 minutes, I'm like, why the fucking hell did I do this?
Yeah.
Over there, not I don't want to do it, but I do want to do it. But it's a bit of I don't know. It's like I don't know what it is inside me that just make it. And you need a shit straight away, and it's just like, oh Christ, we're going. Too much.
I'm like that as well. See if somebody messaged me 10 minutes before the podcast and said they could do it, I'd be like, not a problem, fine. I do get the fear. I've never ever had that buzz. But once you're in, once you start talking, it goes right away.
Yeah.
Kind of what you said, Stevie, about kind of how we're responsible, maybe sometimes for how an artist's kind of career goes. So I was looking back at some of my episodes to see the one with Sam Herlihy for Hope of the States. If you listen back to that, I kind of feel a bit responsible for that band coming back and playing gigs last year, because when I interviewed them, there was no Hope of the States, there was no kind of he didn't even have the appetite to do the podcast. He's like, nobody's interested in the story, nobody wants to listen to me. And it was only through a good couple of days of messaging him and getting him to agree to come on the podcast. And you could hear him through the interview, kind of things going on his head and thinking about maybe there is a market for them again. And then 6 months later, they announced they were going to do these gigs and tour. They hadn't toured in 20 odd years. And I kind of thought, well, is that part of my conversation with him that's got him to that? So I do kind of take the credit for things like that. So, but I mean, like the smaller bands as well. I know what you're saying with that, Carol, because I've had a couple on, like I had the Florentines, and that was like 4 young boys, and it was like all one word dancers. It's really hard to kind of get them to open up. One of them had his mum sitting next to him. So it can be hard, but these are the things that you learn as you move on it.
It's always going to happen. You're always going to get different personalities, and everybody is completely different. And it's always nice when you have when you like be a bit silly with them and they react to it well, because sometimes you can push it and they're just like, no. But when you make that connection with guests, like I've had Andrew Cushing on 4 times now on the podcast, 5 I think, can't really remember. But the first time I interviewed him in lockdown, when he was just kicking off, when he just done his single with Noel Gallagher, it was just like, I just felt a connection with him, and he was so open about what he was saying, and that's why I've had him on so many times on the podcast, because when you do make that connection with people, it's
you can see the connection as well.
Yeah.
You can see it, but I mean, obviously, I've had him on as well, and he is one of the guys as well. He is quite infectious and quite easy. Easy to get on with. So,
a lot of people don't realize the cost of the podcast as well, because it comes out your own pocket, doesn't it? You have to pay, I think it's 16, 17 quid for Zoom now, because if you don't know, Zoom is free to use for about half an hour, and then it cuts you off. I can remember doing podcasts, and as a Yorkshireman, bit tight, I didn't want to pay for Zoom, and then I used to tell the guest, if it goes past half an hour, I'll email you another link after, and we'll start another chat after to start another 30 minutes. And that just became a pain in the ass. So I just thought, right, I'm just going to have to pay for it. And there's costs like that. There's equipment in there. There's time. I'm on Amazon every 5 minutes, just spending money I ain't got on equipment. Which I do love it, and I've built this like nice little studio since getting my new house last year, and people don't see that side of it either, do they? There's a cost, and I'm speaking for myself. I don't make a penny from the RGM podcast.
No, same here. I don't. I make the Orient Outlook has got a sponsor, and we do write out the Outlook, but in terms of the Fantastival, because you can go and deal with your podcast provider to get adverts put in, and then you get money for plays.
Yeah, you need like 5,000 a week or something to get that. I think I was looking into.
Not even worth it.
Yeah,
it's not even worth it.
Yeah,
but it doesn't feel like the right thing to do. Not to say that if someone offered me a wad of cash and said, "I want to plaster your Fantastival," with ads for my company that I would be like, no, it's my artistic integrity, no way.
Yeah.
But
It's the
yeah, like you said,
equivalent to it's the equivalent to a Saudi takeover at a football club, is it? I'm not getting ads for anything.
Well, I did have a sponsor once. I had Scott's Menswear, and it did become problematic. I had Tom Megan on the guest, and
right?
they asked for their branding to come off it. They didn't want to be linked to him with all the story on the news and stuff, which is fair enough. You know, each of their own. And you know, you had to re-edit stuff and re-upload stuff again and just sort it all out. But they went bust in the end. So hey,
Yeah, that's a minefield. See, once you start
yeah,
doing that, because then you've not got control of your podcast, don't you know? And
yeah.
on the Tom Mean thing, because I kind of talk about that quite a bit. I mean, I see like now he's still getting the festivals this year. They're still
Yeah.
kind of chatty him getting
Yeah.
chucked off bills. This has been going on for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
What's kind of your thoughts on that?
I personally think because I've had him on the podcast twice. The first time I had him on, got a little bit of stick online for it. After building up a bit of a relationship with him, I went to see his gig at O2 Ritz and went backstage and met him just for a few minutes and said hello and that because I just felt like I got on with him well. And I just think he's paid his dues. He was with his wife at the time. It was with his wife. He's still got a loving relationship with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's paid his dues personally.
That,
And
that's my thoughts as
you
well.
can't hang somebody forever. You can have your own decision on it and make your own mind on whether you're going to invest in his music again or do whatever you want to do. That's your personal opinion. But just from speaking to him and the music that he makes is obvious from the lyrics that he's apologizing to everybody for it. And for me, he's paid his dues and everybody's allowed a second chance. But I appreciate not everybody will think that way too.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. And I mean, my big sister suffered from domestic abuse for years,
Yeah.
so I understand the feeling with stuff like that. But I think there was a lot more to it. You know what I mean? There was a lot more, obviously, as you talk about in your podcast, Stevie, about mental health. There's a lot of mental health going on with Tom at the time as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think the band helped him. I don't think the band were as supportive as they could be.
Yeah.
And yet
Agree.
we're now kind of 5, 6 years down the line and he's still been punished for it. As you say, I think he's tried his hardest to make amends and he's still with his wife now. So let the guy go out and do what he's best at. He's a front man, a bona fide front man, and people are trying to stop him earn a living doing what he's good at. I think it's shocking to be fair.
I mean, there's a lot of mental health. I mean, there's podcasts now for everything, right, these days. There's loads of like mental health podcasts. There's some really good ones out there, and it's interesting listening to quite a few of them. I listened to one recently with Roman. I can't say his surname. Radnanathan, the comedian, the
Oh
guy
yeah.
who goes out with Rob Beckett, like not goes out of him, but does like the partnerships with Rob Beckett, and he's got like an amazing mental health story. So there's so much kind of out there. I thought on the Tom thing, people will have their own view of it. He was obviously in one of the biggest bands in the UK and is now, no disrespect to the venues he's playing venues that Kasabian wouldn't have looked at twice in their heyday. So he's obviously suffered off the back of that, and I can see why people would want to stand by him. But I could also, to be fair, see why people would go, actually,
Yeah.
I don't want to. However, you know, his that is quite well documented, and there's probably a lot more going on in other bands and artists that aren't documented that probably, if they were, you'd probably run a mile from them. So it's a tough one. Although manager at HV Leicester recently retired, and he knew Tom, and Tom recorded him a video, which he didn't have to.
Oh.
Recorded him like a farewell, happy retirement video, which was absolute quality. So I haven't met him. He's not been on my pod. It's got a theme of like people going on your pods and not coming on my pod. So Andrew Cushing and Tom Mate. And if you're watching this, mate, give me a bell. Come on.
We'll tag him in it.
But he didn't have to do that, and he did,
Yeah.
and he seemed like a sound guy. But you know, it's a very difficult one. I was sniffing around. I can't remember his name. The front man for Hurricane Number One. This was like a couple of years ago, and he he said something, got posted something about the BLM movement and got a really negative feedback. And I was like, I think he friend requested me, and I thought, well, he's obviously requesting me for the Fantastival. He's not just found me and like look at my photo. He's obviously seen me interviewing a few of the old kind of Britpoppy acts, and he obviously wants to come on. And I kind of thought, oh, shall I? Shan't I? And I can't remember. I asked someone, and I was like, "What do you think on this?" Someone whose opinion I respected, and they were like, "You should probably stay away for the time being because there's still a lot of heat coming from what he said." And I didn't bother following it up, which probably wasn't the right thing to do at the time. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's really difficult.
It is difficult with that kind of stuff, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. You just have to,
Yeah.
yeah. I think you'll just have to be able to justify it if you do get stick. So there has to be a reason why you're doing it, not just for views, I suppose. So if you can justify why you're doing it, then because all in the comments and stuff, it's all like blah blah blah, all standard stuff that you'd expect. Why are you doing this? Even our friends, it's just like why you're giving airtime to certain people. It's just like this is why. This is why everybody's allowed a second chance. If you did something wrong, would you want a second chance? Although that's kind of where I come from with it. But you mentioned earlier, Stephen, you've taken a bit of break from your podcast.
Yeah, so I think we've mentioned, I
Is that
guess,
something you'd
the
want to talk?
time. Yeah, I could talk about it. I guess the time it takes to make a podcast is quite long. Like we've mentioned, you've got to
Mm,
record it, arrange it, follow up, and everything that comes out during the social posts in the week. And my mum got admitted to hospital like in early August, and by that time you're always running. I don't know how far ahead you run, but I've always got like three or four in the pipeline, and I always try and record them quite closely to putting them out there so people don't forget about them. I used to like backdate them massively to the point where by the time I was putting out a podcast, I'd almost forgotten about it myself. So,
mm,
um, got to August, I was in hospital a lot of the time, and I thought this is going to be really difficult for me to kind of follow up
mm,
and keep producing. And we got to, I think it was like early October, and I was like, this is getting really difficult to maintain. So I took a break from it. And then just was too busy to get back into it. And
yeah.
unfortunately, my mum passed away in December.
Sorry to hear that.
January and February were write-offs. And then I got into March and I thought, it's quite difficult to get that momentum back because when you're in that world of podcasting, you don't realize it, and I'm sure you just probably don't realize it, but you've got a lot of momentum behind you. You're like doing it weekly, you're not even thinking about it, you're following up leads, you're emailing people, you're posting, and your momentum is taking you forwards. Where if you stop doing that for 3 or 4 months, you actually look back and go, "Fuck, that's so much work that I've actually done." And I thought this is going to be a not a ball ache, but this is some effort to start this again. This is going to take my Twitter, not that I had thousands of followers, but I went from like 1.5k, which I was quite proud of because I think there weren't many bots in there. Normally you can spot bots who follow you. There weren't many bots. It's all real people, which is really nice. That went down. Obviously, you had all the stuff with Twitter and those people migrating to Blue Sky. So I think naturally I lost about 150 followers off Twitter, and you're thinking, fuck, it's like 10% of the audience on Twitter, which people do look at. So that went, and you're thinking, I need to build this up again. So I sent a few emails out of leads I had and said, hello, remember me? It's me again. I'm hassling you
Yeah.
again. Um, and some people came back straight away, and I was like, "This is brilliant." Some people haven't replied. That's always gonna happen.
Yeah.
But you get that when you send that email, you already kind of get that buzz back, and people replied. And yeah, I'm glad to say, but by the time this goes out, I would have been one episode back, and I've already recorded another episode forthcoming. So I recorded my first episode back, just gone, and then on the same day, I had someone who was suggested to me, and I thought he won't do it; it's too high profile. Come back and said, "Oh, I can do it on this day at this time," and I was like, "Could I record two Fantastivals in 2 days after not doing a Fantastival in 7 months?"
Yeah.
So I literally done one at 10 a.m. my time because it was an Australian band and it was 7 p.m. their time, and then I done another one at 6:30 um,
Yeah.
on the same day, and I thought, yeah, this is brilliant. Like I've missed this. This is great. The actual conversation and people talking about their musical journey is like superb. And so yeah, it's happy to be back. I think I've underestimated how much work it is to kind of get it back and that momentum. And I'm kind of in this world where my comeback episode hasn't come out yet, and I'm not skeptical, but I'm unsure as to if it will. If I need, it's going to be a while to get back to that listening base to what I had. The reaction's been very good. and I'm very grateful for that. On Twitter, but like you said, you're not quite sure. Some episodes you think will be massive aren't. Some episodes you think might not be so massive are. I don't know how long it would take me to get back into that realm of getting engagement. And guess, the TikTok, very kindly, Martin, you mentioned my TikTok earlier. I was hitting about 1,000 views on TikTok, which I was quite happy with. The new one came back, hit 250, and I'm like, it's the algorithms are fucked. Like my algorithm is gone. Whatever was
Yeah.
pushing me up the algorithm very minutely is now kind of left me, and it's all about building um, that back up. So it's hard, especially after you take a 7 month break, not the actual recording, but getting back into the world of doing it all. And I was in that world of new music, independent music, and I knew exactly what was coming out when. I haven't followed it as closely, and I'm completely like lost. There's loads of new bands who I've lost track of. There seems to be bands who aren't doing it anymore. There seems to be artists who've got much bigger. So if you don't remain focused on it, you can very quickly lose your track of it.
It's
Which I didn't realize the impact of that. How quickly you can kind
being
of
a
lose it.
slave to the algorithm, and they say in podcasts. I just watched some video somewhere that mentioned it. You've got to be consistent with it. It's got to go out on the same day each week, so the algorithm knows. But I just think, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
All that kind of shit. I can't be doing with that kind of stuff because I'm not going to be a slave to no fucker, and particularly an algorithm. I try my best to get one out every week, and I used to worry when I'd not quite got a guest for the next week, but I kind of just give myself a break from it now and just think, well, you're only human, you're doing this thing for now. You've got a few people that like it, that enjoy it. Fair enough. They might be a little bit disappointed that you're not there for a week, but it'll be all right. I've
Do you guys
stopped beating myself up about it, really. If I do have to miss a week, just mentally, I just think it's good to just let that side of things go sometimes.
do you guys have an ambition for the pod? Is there one overarching ambition? So Carl and Martin, if you said perfect world, where does Time for Heroes land in a year? Like what is the goal? Is there a goal?
I'd like to leave my job and it pay me like a full-time wage. That would be like a dream goal, but I just can't see that happening. But that is like a goal. I'm trying to do it as professional as I can to be the best that it can. But I just think, who knows? You never know. That it's such a saturated market. There's billions podcasts out there, and to try and break through, even getting close to the league tables and that kind of stuff is hard work. So the honest answer is I don't know. The honest answer is I am ambitious with it. I would like it to at least fund its own costs. That'd be great. Like 17 quid a month for Zoom, cover that. That'd be amazing. Just to start.
Have you thought about the buy me a coffee thing? Because this seems to be something that's building. So I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if you've seen this, Martin.
I've got like a leave as a tip thing on my link tree for the podcast. But,
you've got that.
Yeah, but like not many people do, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be similar to Carol. If I could make a living out of this, I mean, like I would much rather be sitting talking to rock stars than getting into Royal Mail on the night shift and put parcels on a belt. You know what I mean? For 8 hours, it'd be my dream. Obviously, that's what I did at college 23 years ago. So that's what I wanted to do when I was younger, and it's only now that I've got this opportunity. But I can't see me quitting my job anytime soon. But it's just about kind of keeping the momentum up and getting bigger guests. And obviously, mine's is called Time for Heroes. I do kind of say quite a bit. Everybody that I have on my podcast is in some way a hero of mine. That's why I bothered to take the time to get them on. So I just keep doing it and keep speaking to people. I have been in the last few weeks looking at actors and people like that, but they're so hard to get on.
Right.
So obviously, I don't know, there's some big kind of programs on the BBC, some big dramas with some big actors in it. And I've been sending emails out, but I really hard to. It's easier to get a musician than it is to get an actor. But maybe I'm going for too big an actor. You know what I mean? I want a Stephen
Tom
Graham or
Cruise.
a Robert Carlyle or something like that.
Tom
But I will.
Cruise full Scientology podcast with Tom Cruise would be nice, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
But I think as well what I do is I'm constantly writing lists of guests in, and then I find them like 6 months later, and then I think, well, look, I've got like five of them. So
Yeah.
that kind of
Mm,
thing, if you write things down, then it will happen.
mm.
I do kind of believe in that to an extent.
What about
What
you?
about
What
yourself,
about you?
Fed?
Yeah, Steve.
What's that, sorry?
What about yourself? What's your ambition for yours?
Do you know what? Until I asked that question, I hadn't really thought about it. Just to have a constant. Do you know what? Financially, I'm kind of past the point of thinking it will happen financially. Just to, I guess mine is just to have a catalogue of episodes that I'm proud of,
Yeah.
which might sound fucking stupid, but I look back and I'm so proud of my guest list. I've got people who I hadn't spoken to in 20 years who literally message me saying, "Mate, this is amazing," and I'm like, "Do you want to come on and be a guest?" And they're like, "Yes." So I'm really proud of some of those episodes. I've got, you know, Sharon Jones, who was a dear friend who passed away about 2 years ago. She's like episode 29. That memory of me and her on that fantastic, that is always there. That episode 100 of me and my mum is all like that is always there. No one can take that away. That's always available, which I'm forever like grateful for. As well as that, I've got. If you would have told 16-year-old Steve he would have been speaking to John Power, Damon from Ocean Colour Scene, that
Yeah.
world would not have believed for a second. Saffron from Republica,
Yeah.
like those kind of people. I just would never have gone. This kid would have never spoken to anyone because this kid didn't speak when he was younger. And B, like, in what world would I be hanging out one on one, even though it's virtually, like to these people? So, no, the ambition is to keep it going and just to keep, I guess, keep it honest. And that might sound ridiculous. That's why I don't really go to PR companies as it stands. So every approach I make is an email from me, not to like a blanket marketing or managing company. It's me going direct to artists. So I haven't really thought about going to PR agencies because Phil, once you do, you kind of you're not as in control of it as what you are. So a lot of the time I'm going direct into the artist. I mean, I've had some amazing rejections. I had a rejection from Brian Adams about 4 years ago, and I was like, "Wow, I've
Mm.
actually got an email rejection from his manager," which I was proud of. I got one from Nils Lofgren, who's Springsteen's guitarist, a couple of years ago. When I was like sending emails, I was like hunting out these management companies, but just making specific approaches to specific artists. So I had some amazing rejections, but again, when you get like someone goes, "Yeah, actually, I'm up for this," and you must have felt the same when you've eventually got Sam. You're like,
Yeah.
"Amazing! I don't care who listens. It's just going to be an amazing chance to get to talk to someone about their life, their music, and their." For me, the Fantasy Festival lineup element of my podcast is amazing because you never know who's going to take you down what alley, and
Mm.
that can spiral a podcast into so many different facets.
Yeah.
And because it's 5 acts and an encore, no guest is ever going to give you the same lineup ever with the same encore. And so you're never quite prepared of what route it's going to take you down. So
Even
I
pre-
always find
even
it.
preparing for yours, Stephen, it's hard because there's that many bands you could pick. I think I were a bit of a pain in the arse on your podcast because I ended up picking like two festival lineups because I couldn't fit all I wanted to into it. I just had to. As a guest on it, it's difficult to. Cause you're particularly me. I'm always thinking I'm missing somebody out here. I'm missing somebody out, and
I had a
you
band
are.
who I had a guitarist in the band who was like, "Yeah, we'll do it," and I was like, "Oh, brilliant!" And then I sent him the spec, and he went, "Oh, sorry, we can't do it." And I thought you've looked at the spec and you thought, fuck this, it's too much work on my on the part of the guests. And I
Yeah,
thought, well, fuck you then. But yeah, it is all there's nothing more I love than when like someone joins a Zoom and they're like, "Do you know what? Like I've really had to really think about this fantasy festival." And I'm like, well, good, because you've as a guest, like
yeah,
it's not just the standard questions. You've had to go away and think about what you're gonna do and how you're gonna approach this podcast. So even if they don't enjoy the experience. I go, right, boring. That guy's just asked me
yeah.
what my fantasy festival is. They've had to go, unless people go and do it on the fly, and some people do it on the fly, which is quite funny because you see the panic on their face when they haven't quite read the spec. You can see,
Yeah.
yeah, where would I hold it? So. I do like the fact that the guests kind of have to work or have a pre-notion of what they're going to come to the podcast on, as opposed to buy my new album. It's £5 on iTunes or it's 9.99 from HMV or You could get it on red vinyl or blue vinyl or whatever. It's not. I do like that. But yeah. Like anyone, if someone said to me, "Look, we're going to take your podcast. Don't worry about working anymore. We're going to build a
Yeah.
studio for you out your back," that would be incredible. Um,
Yeah, I do like it when I see podcasts. I've just started watching the Blue Monkey podcast. Shout out to those guys. I've just started
yeah,
some of their content, and they've got their own studio where it's like when you see the American podcast where they've got a proper studio and it cuts different people and they've got like a telly where they search for stuff on internet and all that kind of stuff. And even like lads at their level, they're still the production for their podcast is just amazing. And it's just that I'd love to have my own little studio somewhere that pays for itself, just out of the way. And then I can bother people every week and go part-time at work. That'd be the absolute dream.
there's some podcasts who do it full time, and they do like 3 or 4 episodes a week. And I'm like, when you're doing it that quickly, you're kind of undervaluing your episodes. I find like once a week is perfect, and I wouldn't do more than one a week. But get people doing 2 or 3 episodes a week, and you're like, can't like you don't get time to focus. And as a consumer, to listen to 2 or 3 podcasts a week of the same pod,
Yeah.
it's quite a big ask for the consumer.
It's funny though as well. Like, so there over Easter, I done like the 5 episodes in the 5 days.
You mad
That's
bastard.
right, yeah.
Well, I mean, I had that backlog, but it's that kind of like obviously you touched on Stevie that you had that time out. I was kind of the same. Like I stopped in September and I came back in January. And see, coming back in January, you kind of you get that buzz once, as you say, once you start sending out the emails. And I think January's a good time in the music industry. Everybody's releasing albums, so between January and February, I had Pastel, Bilk, Kyle Faulkner, Brooke Combe, Tonto, all of them. Every week I was bringing out a podcast, and then it got to a point where I contacted that many people that I had so many, and I thought, I can't put these out every week. I didn't have time to kind of edit and record and do my job and be a husband and a father and all that. There's so much went into it, and I built up this backlog, and then I thought Easter time I'm just going to put the 5 out, and now I'm at a point where I've got this one, and then I'm recording on Sunday, but I've got nothing at the moment other than them. So it kind of you do go through wee peaks and troughs, I think, and
Yeah.
I think one of the things, like obviously like you said, Carl, about sometimes you worry if you've not got an episode to bring it. I think it's maybe about being kinder to yourself and just beating yourself up, because I kind of believe that whatever audience you've built up, if they like you, then they'll let you have the break, and they'll come back and they'll listen whenever you're back. So
And it's weird with shows sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes a few days can go past and not many have listened to it, but then people just haven't got round to it yet. And then you see a big spike maybe the week after on a certain show or something like that when they've people are busy, aren't they? You can't expect them when this show comes out on a Sunday. You can't expect them to be right. I'm putting an hour of my day away just to listen to this podcast. People just have busy lives and they get round to it whenever they get round to it, don't they? So sometimes when you see a show that's been out a week and you think that could have done better, we're expecting a bit more from that one. It does, particularly on YouTube. You do see the numbers quite dramatically increase in time because people just get to it whenever they can or whenever they can be asked.
You made a good point before, Martin. I think when you mentioned loved ones, I think a big amount of kudos has to go to our loved ones, right? Because
Yes.
every Sunday night I'm doing the Outlook, and at least once a week, I'm doing the Fantastival, and it's like, right, I'm doing a Fantastival this time. So my process is I go like in our office room, I shut the door. I'm like, right, I'm doing the Fantastival now. I'm not sure how long I'll be. I think I'll be quite quick. I always say to my wife, this will be a quick one. And it's never like a quick one. It's always at least like an hour.
Yeah.
And no matter how long the pod is, the meeting's always at least an hour. Just be a quick one. I've done one with like people in America that the time difference, and I'm up till like midnight, and my wife's literally, I can hear her pacing like in the hall. She won't come and say, "Can you stop this?" But she's pacing to let me know, like, "Can you hurry this up?" So I feel like we all need to shout out our loved ones,
Too right. Nice one, Kirst.
spouses, kids, pets.
yeah, my pets are a pain, man. They're always there, always kind of climbing up on me at the most opportune moments.
My cats like to put their arse on my keyboard. It's one of their favourite things. That's that. Bless them. Well, for me, I think I think I've enjoyed that chat, lads, and I would ask anybody to pop onto within the link of the description of this podcast. It's going to have a link for for Martin's Time for Heroes podcast and Stephen's Fantastival podcast. So just try each other out. That's the point of us all getting together, really, and having a good chat with each other's audience and chatting shit. I've really enjoyed this, lads.
Yeah, it's been really insightful. It's been really insightful, Martin and Carl. Carl, kudos to you for coming up with the idea because it is a genius idea. Maybe we make this like a quarterly or like 6 monthly update on how the pods are doing and what's happened since we last checked in with one another. Definitely.
Well, leave a comment in the socials. Let's be all official and try and get some. Let's try to create some fucking engagement out of somewhere. Leave us a comment on the socials and say, "Would you like us to come back?" And we will if you want it.
Yeah, I'd like that. I think it's nice to have this community. It's funny how I've been talking to you, Stevie, on Messenger for quite a bit, and the same with yourself, Carol. And I did kind of mention a few months ago, I said, should we be talking like this or are we rivals? But I don't think we are rivals. I think we're all pushing each other on.
Yeah, I think so.
We all enjoy each other's company and each other's podcasts, and I think it's the way to go is everybody give each other a leg up.
Yeah, we're definitely not rival. I sometimes Carl or Martin, you announce a guest, and I think, fuckers, fuck you. Well, how have you got that?
Well,
with you, Mike, when you got Sam Herrelly, I thought, bastard. Because I had messaged him on Insta, nothing, nada. I thought, how has he done that? But kudos to both of you. Like you said, you put in the work, you get the guests, and anyone you get, it's more of a friendly you bastards as opposed to you actual bastards.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, so I'm just, I don't know what else to do, but just say thanks for everybody for listening. On behalf of me, Carl at RGM, Martin, Stephen, leave a little message for people at your podcast as well, and we'll crack on and enjoy the rest of his day, I think. Go on then,
Stevie.
Go on.
How do I end my podcast? All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Please continue to spread the word, and that word is fantastival. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Martin, and I'm just saying, tune in, listen to both these podcasts. RGM, Carol's doing a brilliant job with that. Listen for Stevie NUSSBAUM and his Fantastival return. And obviously, come back and listen to me at Time for Heroes.
Yeah, big time, big time. Thanks, lads. Really enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day. Nice one. Toodaloo.